I live in an end of terrace house in a decent area of Manchester in the United Kingdom. Like I say, the area is decent, but in my lifetime there has been a few somewhat disturbing crimes. It's the kind of place that, as a child, I was given a lot of freedom but still taught necessary rules to stay safe. Anyhow, this happened only about a year ago, and I had just got a cat off my uncle as he was moving to a smaller place. I live with my dad and my older sister, and I'm 21 now. When this happened, I had just turned 20. I'm quite scrawny and don't have much muscle for my age, but due to my hobbies in athletics, I can easily hold my own. I can recall the night well as it still shits me up. It was a Tuesday and my dad and sister had gone to the local pub for the pub quiz. This happens every Tuesday, and this particular Tuesday was no different. They had always already left by the time I got home from work, as I finished at night and got home around 10:30 PM. This night was no different. I turned up at home a little later than usual, probably 20 to 11, fucking buses, and walked up my path and opened the door. As I entered the living room, Terry, my cat, instantly began purring and rubbing his head against my leg. I knelt down and stroked him. I walked to the kitchen. We have a large open-plan living/dining room that leads to a huge window that looks out into the back garden, though a closed maiden often covers a lot of the view. I turned into the kitchen near the back of the open-plan room and fed my cat. I stood watching him eat and half-heartedly prepared my own food. After he finished eating, he ran to the back door and began meowing and scratching. I must say that we don't have a cat flap. You might say this is wrong or bad, but we only recently got the cat and a lot of the neighbourhood cats try to get into our house even without a cat flap, so we thought it best not to get one. But I'm so glad we didn't have one this night. I unlocked the back door and my cat ran out into the darkness till I couldn't see him, and I closed it. I didn't lock it in case he decided he didn't want to stay out and started scratching at the door. I went back into the kitchen, and whilst waiting for my food to cook, I began washing up, looking out into the pitch black of the garden. It was so dark I could see my reflection clearly in the window. My house was silent, but I was still shocked when I actually heard Terry hiss from outside and fly over the fence to next door. Like I say, I'm not an idiot, and it did shock me, but with Terry being a new cat to the area, I just assumed it was an older, bigger cat and didn't feel the urge to check the garden to see him. After all, he has to fend for himself and I won't always be there. This view quickly changed when I turned my back on the window momentarily to put some bowls in the cupboard and turned around to see someone stood really close to the window, dressed all in black and wearing a really simple, cheap, clown-styled mask. I jumped about a metre in the air and this guy didn't even fucking twitch. I was rooted to the spot for a moment and then he tilted his head and breathed on the window. It was like something from the fucking Purge. 20-year-old me could feel tears welling. What kind of fucking situation was this? I stood, not moving. He didn't move either. And then I remembered the back door. He must have seen my face and realised as he lunged for the door as I did. I reached the door and saw him run straight past, possibly realising he didn't win. I locked the door and backed away, not taking my eyes off it, when I heard the front door open. I turned and sprinted to the porch door, the only thing between me and this madman. I stood there crying for at least 5 minutes before realising there was no force against the door. I relieved the pressure I was putting on the door and peeked out of the curtains. Nothing. My front door was open and I couldn't see anyone in it. I decided, very, very stupidly, to open the door and did so quickly. The porch was empty and my keys were still there. I slammed the door and locked it quickly. I ran to the kitchen, got my phone and called the police. The house was really quiet. It may have been my fear, but it seemed too quiet. I was talking to the operator and explaining how I thought the guy may have left when I heard a thud on the back window. I looked and saw the bastard stood at the back door, just staring at me. He raised his hand and I saw a tiny stone in his hand, and he just began scratching the glass with it. Not breaking or smashing or throwing or anything like that, just lightly scratching it. I was so scared and told the operator, who assured me police would be at my door in 5 minutes and to keep the doors locked until I see or hear sirens. I showed this twisted creep my phone so he knew who I was talking to, and strangely, he didn't sprint off scared or run as fast as he could to get away. He just turned away, walked down my garden and, in the darkness, crept out through our broken back gate. The police showed up and I had to follow standard procedure and leave a statement, and the police filled my dad in when he got home later on. He installed a security light the next day and told me everything would be okay. To be honest, at the time, it was the scariest fucking thing ever. But nowadays it's not too bad. Possibly a prank or some shit. Either way, it scared me enough to tell you guys, and after all that, we really, definitely, never got a cat flap.
A few semesters ago, I was taught in a class that ended around 10 p.m. After that, I usually spent about 30 minutes cleaning up the lab and then had a 30-minute drive. So I was usually home around 11 or shortly thereafter. One evening, as I pulled into my neighborhood, I noticed a large pickup truck with a trailer sitting at a stop sign on the street perpendicular to mine. There was a woman standing outside of the car, talking to someone, maybe the driver or maybe a neighbor. This immediately struck me as odd, because my neighborhood is a tiny town of only a few hundred people, most of whom have young kids. This means that nobody is out of the house after maybe 9 p.m., and certainly not walking around talking. As I drove past, the woman walked to the other side of the truck and got in. As I pulled up to the curb in front of my house, I noticed the truck had followed me. They pulled partly into the driveway of my next-door neighbor. That neighbor doesn't have a truck and isn't usually up that late because of the kids, but I wasn't too worried yet. They had moved in only a month or so earlier, so I figured that they must have been borrowing a truck and trailer from a friend to finish up the move. I walked quickly across my yard and locked the front door behind me, like I always do. It was only a few seconds later when the doorbell rang. Still thinking that my neighbor was the one in the truck, I assumed he had seen me drop something in the yard and wanted to let me know. Now comes the stupid part. My boyfriend was in the back part of the basement at the time, and the doorbell isn't audible down there. To get to the basement, I had to walk right past the front door, which has a pane of glass in it. I would be visible to whoever was outside. So instead of letting him know that someone was at the door, I just answered it.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe. If you've got any ideas for any future content, remember to leave a comment below telling me any ideas you have. Also, a big shout out to Mr. Midnight, who's collaborated with me on this. Be sure to go over to his channel and check out the video that we did over there. There'll be a link in the description. Thanks for your support, guys. Thank you.